My name is Mavis Gerald. I was born in 1979 in a little town called Elysian Falls, tucked somewhere between Moss and Memory in rural Louisiana. Population 1,201 if you counted the ghosts, 1,145 if you didn't. We had 3 churches, 1 gas station, and a river that ran thicker than blood and just as unforgiving. I lived in a creaky shotgun house on Cypress Road with my sister Letty, her 2 sons, and my mother who hadn't spoken in years, at least not in English. Sometimes she whispered in Gullah or tongues, or some mix of both that sounded like gravel being blown across a tombstone. Folks said she lost her mind after Daddy disappeared into the swamp back in '88. But I knew better. She hadn't gone mad. She'd just seen something. We all had in our own way. The day it happened, I was directing the church choir at St. Matthew's Baptist. It was an old wooden building painted white, like most flies are. We were rehearsing Wade in the Water, but something in the air was off. Like the humidity was thicker than usual, like it was trying to whisper through my skin. There were 10 of us in that room. 5 women, for men, and Deacon Silas playing the old, upright piano, wheezing like a smoker with emphysema. We were deep into the second verse when the lights flickered. Not just blinked, but twitched like they were scared. Then came the smell. Ozone and something sweet. Like burnt sugar and static. "Y'all smell that?" I asked. Letty's boy Jamal stopped mid-note. "Smells like rain." "No," I said. "Smells like electricity crawling over a grave." Then the back door slammed open, though nobody was near it. The screen flapped violently like something had entered. Not wind, not a person. Just presence. Deacon Silas looked up from the piano and whispered, "Oh Lord, not again." Again? He wouldn't explain. Then, out of nowhere, I felt my chest lock up. A tightness, like something wrapping around my heart and pulling, not squeezing, like it was trying to yank me out from the inside. My vision went black at the edges, like someone was burning the film of my life in reverse. I fell to the floor. I heard screaming. I heard Letty cry out my name, then say, "No, no, not her, not Mavis," like it was happening to someone who should have been untouchable. But I was already gone. Gone but not dead. See, dying ain't like they say it is in the movies. It's not peaceful, and it damn sure ain't warm. It's cold, but not the cold of weather. No, it's the cold of recognition, like the world suddenly realizing you were never real to begin with. And in that black, floating, freezing nowhere, I waited. I didn't see a tunnel. I didn't see a light. I saw a mirror. Not a physical one, but a shimmering sheet of what I can only call consciousness, reflecting me back to myself. Only this version of me was older, darker, heavier. Her eyes were like mine, but deeper. Like they had swallowed entire lives whole and still stayed hungry. She didn't speak. She just opened her mouth, and from it came the sound of a river. Not water, but time. And then, behind her, the mirror split. And he stepped through. But not yet. That's chapter 2. All I knew then was that I had left behind something broken and entered something honest. Terrifying, but honest. It was the beginning of a truth that would crack my soul open like a split peach and show me everything I wasn't ready to know. Especially about them. But we'll get there. Right now I was dead. And God was watching. I wish I could say I met Jesus with arms wide open and a heart full of praise. But the truth is, I was afraid. Not the kind of fear that makes you scream. No, that's theatrical. This was the kind of fear that makes your soul go quiet. Like an animal that smells fire miles away and knows it's already too late to run. He stepped through the mirror, or rather, he peeled it back like a skin, and the moment he entered, time bent. Not stopped. Bent. Like it had to kneel in his presence. And here's the thing that should have been obvious but wasn't. He was black. Not just in skin, but in essence. He was black like beginning. Like space before stars. Black like the silence between drumbeats that still carries rhythm. He didn't look like the man on stained glass windows. He looked like my uncle from New Orleans who used to sing blues and wore linen suits in July. He looked like us, but bigger than us. I stared. He stared back, calm but fierce. Not angry. Just undeniable. I said, "Are you?" He didn't let me finish. You've already decided who I am. Now undecide. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't echo. It just was, like the air I breathed and never questioned. I wanted to cry, not because I was sad, but because suddenly everything I'd been taught felt like a coat 2 sizes too small. Heavy, itchy, stitched from lies and Sunday sermons. You don't look like what you were told. I know. I get that a lot. Why? Because lies are easier to digest when they're bland and colorless. They made me white so you'd be afraid to touch me, and they'd feel comfortable ruling in my name. That hit me. Hard. Like a slap from my grandma's ghost. I stood there, or floated, or whatever the dead do when they're not really dead, and felt a burning in my chest. Not pain. Rage. Recognition. Revelation. But you let them lie. He looked at me, long and heavy. You want freedom handed to you from the same hands that built the chains? I had no answer. And then he said, do you want to see them? As they really are? I hesitated. What will it cost? Your comfort. Your illusions. Your belief in the story you've been fed since you were old enough to say amen. Then he reached out his hand. I didn't want to take it. But I did. And when I touched him, when I touched this black Christ, this uncolonized God, this being made not in the image of kings but of ancestors in ash and survival, the mirror behind him shattered, and the sky opened up like a wound. I saw Earth. Not from above, from within. I saw white people, but not their faces, not their names. I saw their origins, and what I saw made me tremble. They weren't born evil. They were born afraid. And that fear had metastasized into dominion, into guns, into property lines, into flags, into theology, into slave ships built not just from wood and steel, but from guilt, repackaged as righteousness. They didn't invent evil. They just institutionalized it. I fell backward, spiraling, screaming without sound. And he whispered as I fell, don't hate them, but don't worship them either. Their time pretending is almost over. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in my body, back on the cold church floor, surrounded by paramedics, mouths moving without sound. But I wasn't listening, because I had touched the truth. And it was black. And it was angry. And it was coming. They said I was out for 7 minutes. 7 whole minutes without breath or pulse. Medically dead. The doctor at St. Mercy Regional called it a miraculous resuscitation. But his eyes said something different. He looked at me like I came back wrong. Like a clock that ticks counterclockwise. I wanted to tell him he was right. Because the world I woke up into was not the one I left. At first it was small things. A taste in the air, like metal and rain. The sound of the church bells ringing when no one had pulled the rope. My mama humming in her sleep. But it wasn't any hymn I knew. The tune didn't have notes. It had shapes. But then the dreams started. Except they weren't dreams. I'd close my eyes and find myself in strange places. Old fields, auction blocks, oil-lit drawing rooms. I saw white faces laughing over black bodies strung from trees. Not as a history lesson, but present tense. I felt the warmth of the blood in the dirt. I smelled the fire in their torches. It wasn't a memory. It was something stored. I was seeing things I never lived, but somehow belonged to me. Like a vault had been cracked inside my soul. On the 3rd night, I woke up screaming. Letty rushed in with a wet rag and trembling hands. Her eyes darted to the cross on the wall, the wooden one we'd had since we were kids. You saw it again? She asked. I nodded, teeth chattering. She leaned in, whispering like she was afraid the walls might hear. You brought something back with you, Mavis. I didn't answer. Because I didn't think I brought it. I think it had been waiting. The next morning, I heard it for the first time. A low hum, not from the outside, but inside people. Like every soul was playing its own song. Some were soft, some were jagged, some were just hollow. White folks. Most of them didn't have a song at all. Just static. Like a broken radio, trying to find a station that doesn't exist. At first I thought I was going mad. I even went back to church, tried to pray it away, drown it in gospel. But the choir's voices didn't rise the way they used to. They dragged, like something was holding them down. Sister Florence hit a note so sharp it made the glass in the windows tremble, not from pitch, but from dishonesty. I knew then. I could hear truth. Not words. Not thoughts. But soul tone. And white folks. Their tone wasn't bad. It was manufactured. Artificial. Like a song someone else wrote for them centuries ago, and they'd been lip-syncing it ever since. That's when I realized something awful. They don't know who they are. They're not hiding the truth. They've forgotten it. Worse, they replaced it. With flags. With myths. With gods who look like them and command obedience through conquest. I told Pastor Williams what I was hearing. I thought he'd pray with me. I thought he'd understand. Instead, he leaned back real slow and said, "That's not from the Lord, Mavis." But I saw him, I told him. And he wasn't white. He didn't flinch. He just whispered, "Then that wasn't the Lord." And just like that I knew. This wasn't just about what I saw. This was about what they couldn't afford to believe. Because if Jesus wasn't white, if salvation didn't come in the shape of Europe, if the story was backward, then the whole house falls. And some folks would rather burn with it than walk out into the truth. I walked home that night alone. The sky was heavy. Even the stars looked distant, like they were watching me with suspicion. Something is coming. It's not just a reckoning. It's a return. Not of a savior, but of memory. Of things buried. Of truth scrubbed clean. Of songs that were stolen and are now being sung again, in the bones of black women who've died and come back different. Like me. There's a sound that doesn't live in the world. It lives beneath it. It started the night after I told Pastor Williams about the Jesus I saw. A low, grating hum, like a generator running miles underground. It wasn't audible in the normal sense. More like a feeling you can't shake, a vibration deep in the spine that whispers, "You weren't supposed to know." It followed me home. I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean something followed me. At 3:07 a.m., I sat up in bed, cold sweat clinging to my back like a second skin. The whole house was still. Letty and the boys were asleep. Mama was on the porch, rocking as always, humming that same unholy lullaby. But I felt it. Someone, something, standing at the edge of my yard. I pulled the curtain back. He was tall. Pale. Still. Dressed like someone trying too hard to look normal. White shirt, tan slacks, leather shoes. Like a man drawn from memory, not born. His face was smooth, too smooth, like time had passed over him untouched. He was staring directly at me. Not like a stalker. Like a warning. Like he knew I'd seen the wrong thing and lived to tell it. The next day, 3 more white men in identical clothes walked past my house. One of them tipped his hat. No smiles. Just acknowledgement. I asked around town, but no one else saw them. Not even Letty. Then the phone calls started. First just static. Then whispers. Then my own voice repeating things I hadn't said yet. I unplugged the landline. They called my cell. One message, always the same. Forget what you saw. Before you remember what we did. I knew then that this wasn't just spiritual. This was systemic. Because if you think oppression dies, you've never seen it change clothes. You've never seen it sit down across from you, clean-shaven, well-mannered, and full of concern. They weren't demons. They were preservationists. Preserving the lie. Protecting the myth. And I was now a liability. I started digging. Library records. Church archives. Old funeral ledgers tucked behind mildew and mold. I needed to know who these men were. What this sound was. Why I was being watched like a loose thread. That's when I found it. The White Noise Society. It was a name buried in a footnote in an 1896 church document. A brotherhood formed to preserve the sanctity of the Christ image and suppress disruptive mystical reinterpretations. That was fancy talk for, make sure Jesus stays white and no one ever says otherwise. They weren't a club. They were a covenant. Doctors, preachers, judges, town leaders, all pledged to protect the doctrine of whiteness under the veil of faith. They killed prophets. They rewrote hymns. They funded art. They hung mystics. And every so often, when someone got too close to the truth, like Harriet, like Baldwin, like Mama when she went silent, the noise came for them. Not to scare. To erase. And now it was coming for me. One night, I drove out to the old plantation ruins near Cane Hollow. My hands weren't mine. My thoughts weren't mine. Something called me there. Not evil, not quite, but ancient. The way roots call bones back to the earth. And there, in the basement of the burned-out main house, I found a hidden room, lit only by the sliver of moonlight. Inside were paintings. All of Jesus. All white. All identical. Except one. In the back, wrapped in cloth and spiderwebs, was a portrait of the Jesus I saw in the mirror. Black. Fierce. Smiling. Not kindly, but knowingly. On the back of the canvas, a single word was carved in burned ink. Remainder. As in what's left when the lie is removed. I left that place different. I wasn't scared anymore. Not of them. Not of the noise. Because I realized something. The white noise can only silence what's afraid to sing. And now my voice ain't mine alone. Something speaks through me. Something buried. Something black. And it's remembering itself. Time didn't break. It bent. Not like a stick, but like a story too tired of being told the wrong way. It started the morning I looked in the mirror and saw another woman blink back at me. Not me, not now. Her skin was darker, her lips cracked, her eyes heavy with centuries. She wore a tignon wrapped in blood-red cloth and had the kind of gaze that survived things no mouth should ever speak. She opened her mouth, and I felt water pour into mine. Not real water. Memory water. Suddenly I was in a field. Hot. Choking. Sugarcane. My hands blistered. My back open and buzzing with flies. I couldn't move because she couldn't move. I was her, or she was me. We weren't just connected. We were overlapping. I saw the overseer. I saw what he did. I felt my body die and keep breathing. Then I snapped back, gasping in my own kitchen, clutching the sink like it might fall through the earth. Time had stopped asking permission. From then on, it came in flashes. Washing my hair, I saw a church burning in 1964. Eating okra, I remembered speaking Yoruba in a dry blue desert I've never been to. Touching Mama's hand, I saw her younger than me, wrapped in linen, dancing in a circle around a tree covered in bones. Her eyes white as milk. You think you just woke up, a voice told me. But you were never asleep. You were buried. Each day more cracks in the world. More voices behind walls. More reflections that didn't match. One afternoon, I stood in front of the river by the church. The one that took Daddy. The one that kept giving back dead things. I watched the water churn and split, like it had something to say. Then I heard it. We didn't drown, it whispered. We became current. And I knew. They were still here. All of them. The ones stolen. The ones silenced. The ones called property, then problem, then missing. They weren't gone. They'd just gone underneath. Beneath history. Beneath doctrine. Beneath whiteness. Waiting for the moment a mouth like mine would open wide enough to let them speak again. And speak they did. I stopped understanding English the way I used to. It started sounding false, like a performance language. But when I dreamed, I spoke something else. Something round and rhythmic. A tongue made of soil and fire and bones and sky. One day, Letty caught me mumbling in it. She dropped the plate in her hand. Mavis, she whispered, that's what Grandma used to speak when she prayed over the babies. I nodded, but I wasn't surprised. Because I wasn't just me anymore. I was all of us. The broken. The buried. The burnt. The blackened. Not in shame, but in power. And the more I became them, the less the white noise could touch me. It still tried. It sent dreams of erasure. White men offering salvation in empty rooms. Women in pastel dresses trying to pour bleach into my ears. But their hands passed through me. Because I had become ancestor-proof. Then the message came. Written on my window in ash. No footsteps beneath it. Just a phrase. If you don't shut your mouth, we'll burn what's left of your name. And I laughed. Because they'd forgotten something critical. My name ain't mine anymore. It belongs to every voice they tried to silence. And together, we are a roar wearing human skin. It began with a funeral that no one attended. Not for a person, but for a story. A white story. The one that told us who God was, where heaven was, what virtue looked like. A story where history started with ships, where salvation wore colonial robes, and where whiteness was a blank canvas onto which the world was painted. I didn't kill that story. It died screaming, clawing at its own illusions. And I was the only one who could hear it. The last vision came at sunset. The sky turned the color of rusted teeth. The trees around my house bowed inward like they were ashamed. I felt the earth sigh beneath my feet, not with grief, but with release. Something was coming. I sat in Mama's rocking chair on the porch, eyes closed, heart steady. No prayers, just breath. Then he came. The one from the mirror. The real Christ. The black one. The one born beneath stars white folks never named, wrapped in cloth that smelled of myrrh, blood, and smoke. He wasn't alone this time. Behind him, a procession. Not saints, but truths. Every woman who'd ever been silenced. Every man who'd been crucified by policy instead of nails. Every child rewritten as thug, slave, statistic, or absent. They were all there, walking without footsteps, glowing without light. I didn't cry, because tears are for mourning. This was a reckoning. Jesus, the real one, spoke only once. They made me in their image, but I was made in yours. And then he pointed behind me. I turned, and there it was. The white thing. It looked like a man, but not quite. Too clean. Too bright. Its face was featureless, like a blank sheet. It radiated authority, purity, confidence without conscience. It pulsed with every painting, every lie, every prayer whispered through gritted white teeth. But it was cracking. From the inside. I walked toward it. And as I did, I heard it speak, not in words, but in pleas. We gave you God. We gave you order. We gave you meaning. And I answered. You gave us chains and called it faith. Then I reached out and touched it. Not with hate, with truth. And it shattered. The light that poured out wasn't holy. It was hollow. An empty brilliance. Blinding, but weightless. Just noise, dressed as enlightenment. That's all whiteness ever was. Not skin, not people, not culture, but a construct. A desperate, colorless myth designed to fill the hole left by disconnection from land, memory, God. When it broke, something ancient rushed in to fill the space. Drums. Soil. Voices. Darkness. Not evil, but origin. And I felt the ancestors gather in my chest. Not to speak. To sing. And when I opened my mouth, the song that came out was not mine. It was ours. A song without words. Just grief and grace and grinding bone. A reminder. A promise. A spell. A new Genesis. They say I came back different. Again. People stop me on the street like they recognize me from somewhere older than memory. The white noise is gone now. Replaced by something louder. Black thunder. Not to destroy, but to remind the world we were never after. We were always before. And now we are the voice that undoes light, so the world can finally sleep and dream right again. Amen.